At 10:28, on a rain-slick Tuesday night in October, the fluorescent lights inside the Target on Bankhead Highway in Atlanta hummed with a low, relentless vibration that made the back of a tired mind ache. The store was nearly empty, save for two late shift workers sweeping the polished concrete aisles and a single checkout lane open at the front. Rain struck the glass doors in heavy, irregular bursts. On the black rubber conveyor belt of Register 4 sat a modest, highly specific collection of items. One 5-pound bag of Martha White cornmeal, a gallon of whole milk, a dozen eggs in a gray pulp carton, a bottle of store-brand vegetable oil, 2 boxes of maximum strength joint pain relief caplets, and a basic first aid wound care kit. The total on the digital display read $52. 18. The woman standing at the register reached into the pocket of her faded gray work jacket and pulled out a worn paper envelope. The edges were frayed and taped together at the bottom corner with a yellowing strip of Scotch tape. Her fingers were long, clean, and neatly filed, but the skin around her knuckles was red and split from prolonged contact with commercial bleach. She did not look up at the cashier. She unfolded the top flap of the envelope with quiet, deliberate care. Out onto the black counter poured a neat cascade of silver coins. Quarters were stacked in groups of 4, dimes lined up in precise rows of 10, and nickels filled the remaining space. Her hand trembled slightly as she pushed the first stack across the counter, her lips moving silently as she tracked the mental tally she had performed 3 times before leaving her small apartment. 2 spots back in the quiet line stood Marcus Sterling. He wore a faded, dark blue windbreaker that had lost its water-repellent coating a decade ago, gray sweatpants with pilled cuffs, and a pair of worn work boots. Over his head, the hood was pulled low, casting a deep shadow over a face that usually appeared on the front pages of national financial journals. Beneath the left sleeve of his jacket sat a Vacheron Constantin Overseas chronometer, its titanium case resting flat against his wrist, completely hidden from view. He did not look at his phone. He did not shift his weight with impatience. He stood rooted to the linoleum, his eyes fixed on the paper envelope sitting on the counter. Something inside his chest, behind his ribs, pulled tight. Marcus Sterling was 43 years old and worth an estimated $5. $2 billion. As the founder and chief executive officer of Sterling Logistics Global, he controlled a freight and container network that spanned 17 major ports along the eastern seaboard and Gulf Coast. He operated out of a glass-walled corner office on the 42nd floor of the Sovereign Tower in Buckhead, overlooking the lush tree canopy of northern Atlanta. His company moved an average of 14,000 shipping containers a day. A single phone call from his desk could reroute a cargo vessel across the Atlantic Ocean. Yet, as he watched the woman push small stacks of quarters across the register, none of that power meant anything at all. His wealth was a tower built on absolute silence. He did not give keynote speeches at technology summits. He did not host televised charity galas in Beverly Hills. He lived in a quiet, secluded residence off Pace's Ferry Road, served by a private gate and a security detail that was instructed to remain invisible. His personal driver, a quiet, retired Army veteran named Thomas, maintained a black armored sedan that Marcus rarely used on nights like this. Marcus sat in the backseat of boardrooms the way a passenger sat on a city bus, motionless and observant. He had achieved everything a man from Bankhead could dream of achieving, yet he had not enjoyed a single hour of it. Every milestone arrived hollow. The day Sterling Logistics completed its initial public offering, raising over $800 million in expansion capital, Marcus had left the celebration dinner early. He had driven his old 2008 Ford F-150 truck, a vehicle he kept registered, insured, and parked in a private bay, back to the quiet residential streets of West Atlanta. He had parked outside a small frame house on James P. Brawley Drive, turned off the ignition, and sat in the dark for 3 hours. The woman who should have been sitting beside him in that truck was gone. Evelyn Sterling had died 15 years ago. She was 52 years old when her heart failed in a small, rented, two-bedroom apartment just 4 blocks from the very Target where Marcus now stood. At the time of her death, her primary checking account held $38.50. Her refrigerator contained a jar of mayonnaise, half a loaf of store-brand white bread, and a carton of eggs she had purchased for a son who was out working 18-hour shifts trying to secure his first commercial trucking lease. She passed away exactly 24 months before Marcus secured his first major distribution contract with a regional grocery chain. 24 months too early. That 2-year gap haunted Marcus with the weight of an unpayable debt. It was a mathematical reality that no balance sheet could alter. For 23 years, Evelyn Sterling had worked 2 full-time manual jobs to keep a roof over her son's head. From 5 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, she worked as a seamstress in a textile alteration shop near downtown Atlanta. From 3 in the afternoon until 11 at night, she stood behind the fryer at a soul food diner on Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway, dipping poultry into seasoned flour until her wrists swelled to twice their normal size. She returned home every night, smelling of hot cooking oil and heavy industrial starch. Her back was permanently bowed from hours over a sewing machine, yet her posture remained rigid whenever she walked through her front door. Every night, regardless of how late she arrived, she would walk into Marcus's small bedroom, adjust the blanket over his shoulders, and whisper the same phrase into the dark room. "Eat your dinner, Marcus." Mama already ate at the kitchen. She had never eaten at the kitchen. She drank tap water, wrapped her small portion in foil for his breakfast the next day, and went to sleep on an empty stomach. Every year on October 22nd, the exact date of Evelyn's passing, Marcus dropped the Billionaire. He instructed his executive assistant, a sharp woman named Sarah, who had been with him since the beginning, to clear his schedule completely. No calls were forwarded, no documents were signed. He put on his faded windbreaker, took the keys to his 20-year-old Ford truck, and drove down toward Bankhead Highway. He visited the grave at Greenwood Cemetery, laying a small bundle of yellow chrysanthemums against the gray granite marker. He sat on the damp grass until the autumn chill soaked through his trousers, listening to the distant rumble of the freight trains crossing the rail yards. After leaving the cemetery, his ritual always ended at the same location. He walked through the doors of the Target on Bankhead, navigating the aisles where his mother had spent decades calculating prices down to the exact fraction of a cent. He would walk past the clothing racks, past the pharmacy, past the food section, remembering the way she held a pencil in her mouth while scribbling numbers on the back of a utility bill. For 15 years, he had walked through the store like a ghost visiting a past life, buying nothing, speaking to no one, and leaving as quietly as he arrived. Tonight, however, the pattern broke. As Marcus stood behind the woman at Register 4, watching her count out the silver coins from the taped envelope, he felt the heavy silence of his 15-year ritual shatter. The rain outside drummed hard against the roof overhead. The cashier began scanning the items one by one, the electronic beeps ringing out in the quiet store. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes tracking the items moving along the rubber belt, and realized with absolute clarity what was happening right in front of him. The digital display on the cash register beeped continuously, advancing the total with cold efficiency. $14, $20, $28, $50, $39, $10, $46, $80, $52, $18. Nia Vance kept her eyes fixed on the green fluorescent numbers. Her jaw was set tight, the muscles near her ears strained with a tension that came from years of keeping a calm exterior while her stomach sank. Beside her on the counter sat the small, taped envelope, now flattened and empty. The cashier, a middle-aged woman named Brenda, wearing half-moon reading glasses, swept the coins across the counter into her palm, counting them in quiet groups. The sound of metal hitting metal rang out in the quiet lane like tiny metallic apologies. Behind Marcus, a man wearing a red baseball cap shifted his weight from one foot to the other, letting out a loud, heavy sigh that echoed under the high ceiling. A woman, 2 steps further back, pulled out her smartphone, tapping the screen with sharp, theatrical taps of her fingernails, the universal language of public impatience. Naya did not turn around. She did not flinch. She stood straight, her chin level, her shoulders squared, inside her faded work jacket, holding herself with a fierce, quiet dignity that acted as armor against the glances of strangers. Marcus recognized that posture instantly. It was the exact stance his mother, Evelyn, had assumed every Thursday night when the math at the counter did not favor her. Brenda finished counting the coins, cleared her throat, and looked up at Nia. "You've got $47. 30 here, sweetie," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a gentle, sympathetic murmur. "The total is $52. 18. You're short 4.88. Naya's hand hovered over the items on the belt. Her fingers trembled slightly, a micro-movement that only someone standing as close as Marcus could observe. She looked at the 5-pound bag of Martha White cornmeal, the gallon of milk, the dozen eggs, the bottle of oil, the 2 boxes of joint pain relief caplets, and the first aid kit. Marcus scanned the conveyor belt again, his sharp eyes reading the items like an auditor opening a ledger. Every single item was meant for someone else. The cornmeal, milk, eggs, and oil were basic ingredients to prepare hot meals at home. The joint pain medication and the first aid kit were clearly for an ailing family member recovering from an injury or dealing with chronic physical stress. There was no shampoo, no lotion, no magazines, no chocolate bar, no soft drink, no coffee, nothing that existed simply to give Nia Vance comfort or pleasure. She was spending her last, carefully collected cent on the survival of her household while depriving herself of everything. Naya reached out her hand and slowly pulled back one of the boxes of joint pain relief caplets. "Please take this one off," she said quietly. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion, the voice of someone who had practiced yielding to disappointment until it became second nature. The sight struck Marcus directly in the chest with the force of a physical blow. The quiet aisle faded away, replaced by the ghost of a night 28 years earlier. He was 15 years old again, standing in this exact same store, under these exact buzzing lights. His mother, Evelyn, had stood in Nia's exact position, holding a faded paper envelope filled with quarters and dimes. She had been short $3.60 for their week's groceries. He remembered the burning shame in his teenage throat, the way his mother had stood perfectly still, and the way she had gently pushed back a small jar of instant coffee, the only thing she had picked out for herself, so that his school supplies could remain on the belt. Marcus stepped forward. The movement was instant, uncalculated, breaking the strict protocol of emotional distance he had maintained for 15 years. He pulled a plain blue debit card from his windbreaker pocket, bypassed the divider on the counter, and placed it onto the card reader before Brenda could void the medication. "Leave the pain medicine on the bill," Marcus said. His voice was low, deep, and steady, carrying the quiet authority of a man accustomed to directing operations without shouting. "Ring it all together." Nia turned her head sharply. Her dark eyes, framed by deep circles of fatigue, met his with an immediate defensive intensity. There was no relief in her face, no warmth, and no ready gratitude. Instead, her posture stiffened even further, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the man standing behind her in the faded windbreaker. "Excuse me, sir," Nia said, her voice dropping an octave, clear and firm. "I don't need charity. I can manage my own shopping." Marcus looked at her directly. He did not smile. He did not adopt a patronizing tone. He kept his hands in his pockets, standing in a way that offered no threat and claimed no superiority. "It isn't charity," Marcus replied quietly, ensuring his words were heard only by her and the cashier. 28 years ago, my mother stood at this register with a brown paper envelope just like yours. She had to put back what she needed so I could have what I required. I'm not paying this for you. I'm finishing a bill my mother couldn't clear when she was standing where you are. Nia blinked. The defensive edge in her eyes flickered for a fraction of a second, caught off guard by the raw, unvarnished grief beneath his calm voice. She looked at his faded windbreaker, then down at his plain blue card, and finally back at his face. She saw no arrogance, no desire to play the hero, only a deep, familiar pain that matched the weight she carried every day. Brenda processed the card. The terminal chimed softly, displaying the word approved. The cashier quickly bagged the items in thick plastic sacks and handed them over the counter. Nia accepted the bags in silence. She looked at Marcus one last time, her lips pressed into a tight, hard line. "Thank you, sir," she said softly, her voice carrying a fragile, guarded edge. "May God bless your mother." Nia picked up her bags and walked toward the sliding glass exit doors. Marcus stood at the register, holding his unbought 5-pound bag of cornmeal, watching her silhouette move out into the heavy Atlanta rain. The autumn rain poured heavily over the concrete parking lot of the Target on Bankhead Highway, turning the asphalt into a dark, reflective mirror. Marcus Sterling followed at a discreet distance, his hood pulled down to shield his eyes. He stayed 3 rows of parked vehicles behind Nia Vance, his boots making no sound against the wet pavement. Nia walked directly toward a 2004 Honda Accord with peeling clear coat and a missing passenger side hubcap. Inside the vehicle, sitting in the front passenger seat, was a young woman of 20 named Maya. Maya's right leg was wrapped in a rigid medical brace, resting stiffly against the dashboard, the result of a severe knee ligament tear from a warehouse accident 3 months prior that had left her unable to work. Marcus paused behind the damp tailgate of a parked pickup truck, close enough to hear as the rain drummed against the metal roofs around them. Nia opened the rear door, set the heavy grocery bags on the floorboards, and pulled out a foil-wrapped package containing 2 warm cornmeal biscuits she had purchased from the store's bakery counter. She handed the package through the open door to Maya. "Here, eat these while they're warm," Nia said, her voice carrying over the sound of the rain. Maya took the foil package with eager hands, unwrapping it to reveal the steaming biscuits. She took a large bite, then looked up at her older sister standing in the rain. "Did you get something for yourself, Nia? You've been on your feet since 5 this morning at the diner." Nia leaned against the doorframe, offering her sister a soft, reassuring smile, a smile that did not reach her tired eyes, yet carried absolute conviction. "I already ate at the restaurant while I was prepping the morning stew, Maya. I'm completely full. You go ahead and finish those." Standing 30 feet away in the shadows, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The words hit him like a physical blow to the chest. "I already ate." It was the exact same sentence, spoken with the exact same cadence, and wrapped in the same self-sacrificing love that his mother, Evelyn, had used every night of his childhood. It was a sacred lie, passed down through generations of women who chose hunger so that those they loved would not have to feel the weight of empty shelves. Marcus turned away, pulled the keys to his old Ford F-50 from his pocket, and got into the cab. His hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel. He did not start the engine immediately. He sat in the dark cab, watching the red taillights of Nia's Honda Accord fade into the heavy Atlanta traffic, knowing with absolute certainty that he could not simply walk away. At 7:30 the following morning, Marcus sat behind his polished mahogany desk on the 42nd floor of the Sovereign Tower in Buckhead. Below him, the glass and steel metropolis of Atlanta stretched out under a clear morning sky. He pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Sarah," Marcus said calmly, "I need a background verification, not a criminal check, a situational and educational profile. I have a license plate number from a 2004 Honda Accord." "Sarah," his trusted executive assistant of 12 years, noted the numbers without question. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, a thin beige folder rested on Marcus's desk. Nia Vance was 30 years old. Born and raised in West Atlanta, she had graduated from Booker T. Washington High School with a 3.8 grade point average. She had enrolled at Atlanta Technical College, completing 4 semesters toward an associate degree in supply chain and logistics management. Her professors had documented her as an exceptional student with a rare natural aptitude for spatial organization and inventory flow. However, 2 years into her program, her mother had passed away from chronic kidney disease, leaving Nia as the sole guardian and provider for her younger sister, Maya. Faced with funeral expenses, back rent, and a household to support, Nia had withdrawn from college. For the past 6 years, she had survived by working 2 exhausting physical jobs: prep cook at a soul food restaurant on Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, and night janitor at a commercial office complex in Buckhead from 5 in the evening until midnight. Marcus closed the folder. He stared out at the container yards visible in the distance near the rail lines. He knew that if he simply sent Nia a check or paid off her back bills, her fierce pride would compel her to reject it. She did not want pity. She wanted standing. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at the small apartment on James P. Brawley Drive. It was not a grant, nor was it a charitable donation. It was a formal invitation from the Human Resources Department of Sterling Logistics Global, addressed directly to Nia Vance. The letter stated that based on her past academic record at Atlanta Technical College, she had been selected as a candidate for the Sterling Logistics Work-Study Career Advancement Program, a competitive, paid professional track that offered a full-time wage of $24.50 per hour, comprehensive health care coverage, and full tuition coverage to complete her logistics degree during evening sessions. Nia sat at her small kitchen table, holding the letter in her hands. She read the terms 4 times, her eyes scanning every line for a catch, a hidden cost, or an implication of charity. Finding none, she saw only an open door, a legitimate, hard-earned opportunity based on the grades she had fought for years ago. The following Monday, at 8:00 a.m., Nia Vance walked through the glass doors of the Sterling Logistics Operations Center in South Atlanta, dressed in a sharp, pressed dark suit she had bought at a thrift shop, ready to reclaim her life. The South Atlanta Regional Operations Center of Sterling Logistics Global was a massive concrete and glass terminal operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Inside the main dispatch hall, a continuous bank of high-definition digital monitors tracked the real-time movement of over 1,400 long-haul tractor-trailers across 37 states. The air inside the room was cool, filled with the steady hum of computer servers, the quiet click of mechanical keyboards, and the low, hushed tones of dispatchers speaking into headsets. For Nia Vance, walking into this room on her first morning was like stepping into a command bridge of a ship she had only ever seen from the dock. Her transition into the corporate structure was far from seamless. While the Sterling Work-Study program had given her a legitimate desk on the second-floor logistics planning deck, it could not shield her from the quiet, sharp skepticism of her immediate supervisor, a senior route planner named Vance Reynolds. Reynolds was a 52-year-old corporate veteran who had spent 20 years climbing the company ladder. He looked at Nia's background, 6 years as a night shift janitor and prep cook, and saw an affirmative action project rather than a peer. On her third day, Reynolds dropped a thick, printed binder containing 420 pages of raw fleet fuel audits onto her desk with a heavy thud. "These are the secondary regional routes for the Southeastern Corridor," he said, without making eye contact. The automated system flagged a 4.2% fuel variance between the Savannah port and the Atlanta inland hubs. "I need every manual manifest cross-referenced against driver logbooks by 5 p.m. today." If you can't handle the math, let me know now. Nia did not look up to complain. She did not argue, nor did she run to human resources. She adjusted the cuff of her thrift store blazer, opened her spiral notebook, pulled out a red pen, and went to work. What Reynolds did not realize was that 6 years of counting pennies at midnight, managing a household on a $14.60 an hour wage, and balancing 2 jobs while caring for an injured sister had turned Nia's mind into a razor-sharp ledger. She understood numbers not as abstract metrics, but as physical realities. She knew exactly how many miles a truck could cover before its tires degraded, because she had driven an old Honda with bald tires for 4 winters. By 4:15 p.m., 45 minutes ahead of Reynolds' deadline, Nia walked into his glass office. She placed the binder on his desk, along with a 3-page, handwritten summary sheet. She had not only identified the 4.2% fuel discrepancy, but she had also pinpointed the exact structural cause: a recurring 40-minute idling delay at the I-95 way station near Brunswick, Georgia, caused by poorly timed shift changes at the state inspection bay. She presented an alternative secondary bypass via State Route 17 that would eliminate 42 miles of stop-and-go idling per rig, saving the company an estimated $114, $200 annually in diesel costs across the fleet. Reynolds stared at the handwritten sheet, his jaw tightening as he scanned her precise figures. He opened his mouth to find a flaw, found none, and simply closed the binder. "Good work," he muttered coldly. "Get back to the evening queue." For 4 months, Nia maintained a schedule that would have broken a lesser spirit. She woke at 5:30 a.m., cooked a nutritious breakfast for Maya, and ensured her sister performed her physical therapy exercises for her healing knee. She worked her 8-hour shift at Sterling Logistics from 7:30 a.m. to 4:00 p.m., from 5:30 p.m. until 9:15 p.m., 3 nights a week. She sat in the lecture halls of Atlanta Technical College, taking advanced courses in supply chain analytics and industrial fleet dynamics. She returned home past 10 p.m., ate a quick meal of boiled eggs and cold rice, and studied until 1:30 a.m. by the light of a small desk lamp while her sister slept. Her eyes were perpetually rimmed with red, her skin pale from exhaustion, but her spine remained as straight as an iron rod. The true test of her character and intellect arrived on a bitter Friday night in early November. An unexpected, unseasonable ice storm swept down from the Appalachian mountain range, blanketing northern Georgia and eastern Alabama in a thick layer of black ice and freezing rain. By 10 p.m., major arterial highways were closing down. Power grids across 3 counties collapsed under the weight of ice-laden pine trees. Inside the South Atlanta Dispatch Center, red emergency lights flashed across the main wall monitors. At 11:14 p.m., a main transformer outside the facility exploded, triggering a power surge that breached the secondary backup systems. The automated central dispatch mainframe, the digital brain that monitored and routed every vehicle in the fleet, went completely dark. Chaos erupted in the dispatch room. Phones rang incessantly. Less experienced dispatchers shouted over their headsets, unable to access digital route maps or vehicle tracking frequencies. Vance Reynolds stood in the center of the room, his face pale, sweat glistening on his forehead as he tried to pull up offline emergency files on a lagging backup laptop. "We have a primary critical shipment stranded on Interstate 20 West," a dispatcher yelled across the room. "Convoy Delta Niner. 3 refrigerated trucks carrying $84 million worth of temperature-sensitive pediatric vaccines and emergency surgical supplies bound for regional trauma centers in rural Alabama. The refrigeration units on those trailers run on auxiliary diesel generators with an 8-hour battery life. If those trucks sit idle in the sub-zero wind chill for more than 3 hours, the cargo will freeze solid and be completely destroyed." Reynolds grabbed his radio handset, his voice cracking with panic. "Driver 402, what is your exact mile marker?" Can you bypass through the Douglasville exit? Static hissed through the speaker. We're blind out here, dispatch. I-20 West is completely blocked by a jackknifed tanker at mile marker 37. The state patrol is turning everyone back, but the secondary roads are unplowed ice rinks. We don't know which back routes have low clearance bridges. If we take a 53-foot trailer down the wrong county road, we'll get wedged under a timber trestle. We need a clear route right now, or we shut down the refrigeration and dump the load. Reynolds froze. He stared at a paper road map spread across his desk, his hands shaking as he tried to calculate bridge clearances from an outdated state transit guide. I can't confirm the bridge heights on Route 78 under these weather conditions. Reynolds stuttered, his voice betraying his total paralysis. Hold your position, Delta Niner. Wait for state road crews. We can't wait! The driver screamed through the static. The ambient temperature inside the trailer is dropping. We have less than 40 minutes before the thermal insulation fails. Nia Vance stood up from her desk in the back row. She did not ask for permission. She did not look at Reynolds. She walked calmly to the front of the room, pulled a thick, dry erase marker from her pocket, and stepped directly up to the floor to ceiling glass wall, overlooking the dark yard. Step aside, Vance, Nia said. Her voice was not loud, but it possessed an absolute granite edge that cut through the noise of the room like a blade. Reynolds stared at her, stunned. Nia, what are you doing? You're a work-study trainee. Step back. I worked night shift janitorial routes through Douglas, Carroll, and Haralson counties for 3 years, Nia said. Her eyes fixed on the glass wall as her marker began moving with furious, flawless speed. I know every back road, every timber trestle, every way station, and every drainage gradient between Bankhead Highway and the Alabama state line. I've driven those roads in the dead of winter in a front-wheel drive car with no heater. I know where the ice settles first. The room fell completely silent. Dispatchers stopped talking. Supervisors gathered near the glass wall as Nia rapidly sketched a detailed, hand-drawn topological grid of West Georgia's county road system entirely from memory. Driver 402, listen to my voice. Nia spoke clearly into a master radio headset she pulled from a vacant desk. This is Operations Dispatch. Do not take Route 78. The timber trestle at Little Tallapoosa River has a clearance of 13 feet 6 inches. Your trailer will shear its roof off. I need you to execute an immediate hard right onto Highway 113 south toward Carrollton. It is an elevated asphalt county road with 3% south-facing grade. The salt trucks hit that corridor 2 hours ago, so the ice hasn't bonded to the crown. The radio crackled. Duscher, is Route 113 clear of overhead power lines? Yes, Nia answered instantly, her hand drawing a sharp arrow across her glass map. Clearance is 16 feet, 2 inches all the way to the state line. Once you pass the Carrollton bypass, take County Road 16 west. It follows the ridge line, avoiding the low creek bottoms where black ice forms. You will bypass the I-20 wreckage completely and rejoin the interstate at exit 11 in Alabama. Your total transit time will be 54 minutes. You will reach the Regional Trauma Center with 2 hours of battery life remaining on your cooling units. The driver on the other end paused for 3 long seconds. Understood, dispatch. Executing turn on to Route 113 now. Road looks clear. God bless you, whoever you are. For the next 3 hours, while the automated mainframe remained dead, Nia Vance stood at the glass wall. Using only her dry erase marker, her mental map of the region, and her absolute refusal to let a crisis win, she manually routed 47 long-haul freight trucks through the freezing night. She calculated weight distribution, hill gradients, and fuel reserves on the back of paper scratch pads, issuing calm, precise instructions that kept the entire southeastern supply line moving, while every other logistics company in Atlanta ground to a complete halt. Up on the dark balcony of the 42nd floor, standing behind the floor-to-ceiling glass window of his private office, Marcus Sterling watched everything. He stood in the shadows, his hands resting in his jacket pockets, his Vacheron Constantin watch catching the dim reflection of the emergency lights below. He saw the way the rest of the management team had backed away from the glass wall, leaving Nia standing alone at the center of the room, a leader who had not been appointed by a board of directors, but forged in the fire of real survival. A quiet smile touched the corners of Marcus's lips. He saw no trace of the exhausted woman who had counted quarters from a taped envelope in a Target checkout line. He saw the daughter of Evelyn Sterling's spirit, a woman who had taken every piece of pain, every unfair shift, and every bitter cold night and transformed them into absolute, undeniable strength. 14 months after that cold, rain-slicked Tuesday night at the Target checkout line, the grand auditorium of the Atlanta Technical College was filled with the low hum of chatter, rustling program guides, and shifting chairs. The hall was far from lavish, fluorescent tube lights overhead, worn folding seats, and a simple wooden stage framed by the flags of the state of Georgia and the United States. Water stains marked the acoustic tiles near the corners, and the central heating system clanked periodically against the side walls. Yet, for the 68 graduates sitting in dark blue gowns, it was the most significant room in the world. Sitting in the third row of the family section was Maya Vance. Her right leg was completely healed, the heavy medical brace replaced by a simple compression sleeve. She wore a neat white dress that Naya had ironed for her at 5 o'clock that morning. She sat straight, her brown eyes sparkling as she held a small bouquet of yellow chrysanthemums on her lap. Beside her sat Sarah, Marcus Sterling's executive assistant, who had come not as a corporate representative, but as a friend who had watched Naya's daily battles from up close. 3 rows behind them, sitting near the aisle in the shade of the low balcony, was Marcus Sterling. He wore his dark blue windbreaker over a plain white shirt, his Vacheron Constantin titanium timepiece hidden beneath his left sleeve. No one around him recognized the billionaire whose logistics fleet moved billions of dollars in freight across 37 states. In this room, surrounded by working-class families, mothers with tired eyes, and grandmothers holding framed photos, Marcus was simply another witness to a quiet triumph. The Dean of Academic Affairs stepped up to the podium, his voice echoing through the microphone. Nia Vance, Associate Degree in Supply Chain and Logistics Management. Highest honors, class valedictorian. The room erupted into applause. Maya stood up immediately, holding her yellow flowers high, clapping with both hands above her head so loudly that her cheers echoed off the back wall. Nia Vance walked across the wooden stage with slow, deliberate grace. She wore her dark blue gown, pressed crisp and straight. Her hands did not tremble. Her head was held high, her chin level, her dark eyes shining under the stage lights with an inner strength that had been tested in the fires of long night shifts, poverty, and doubt. She received her diploma with both hands, the same hands that had counted quarters, from a taped paper envelope 14 months ago. But this time, what she held was not a measurement of what she could not afford. It was undeniable proof of who she had become. After the ceremony, the narrow hallway outside the auditorium turned into a sea of hugging families, laughing graduates, and children running between legs. Naya pushed gently through the crowd, guiding Maya by the shoulder, until she found Marcus standing quietly near the secondary exit doors, away from the glare of the cameras. They stood facing each other for a long moment in the quiet corridor. Nia did not offer a tearful speech of gratitude, nor did Marcus make a grand corporate gesture. They understood each other through the shared language of survivors, those who knew the exact physical weight of sacrifice. Nia reached inside the pocket of her blue graduation gown and pulled out a fresh, unmarked paper envelope. It was crisp, smooth, and clean. She held it out to Marcus. Marcus looked down at the envelope, then up at her face. He reached out and took it. Unfolding the top flap, he looked inside, Resting neatly at the bottom were paper bills and silver coins, quarters stacked in 4, dimes in 10, nickels and pennies filling the remaining space. He counted the sum by memory alone, exactly 52.18. Wrapped around the bills was a small, folded piece of lined notebook paper. Marcus opened the paper. Written in Naya's neat, precise handwriting were 9 words. For the next woman who says she already ate. Marcus stared at the note. A sudden deep knot formed in his throat. His eyes burned with a heat he had managed to hold back for 15 long years. The billionaire, who had negotiated multi-million-dollar maritime contracts with global CEOs, stood in a concrete community college hallway, holding $52.18, completely unable to speak. "My mother taught me that a debt of dignity must always be returned in full," Nia said softly, her voice steady and warm. "You didn't give me charity that night, Mr. Sterling. You gave me a bridge. Now it's my turn to build one for someone else." That very afternoon, Naya was officially named the Regional Director of Freight Operations for Sterling Logistics Southeastern Division, an executive role she had earned through her brilliant crisis management during the ice storm and her flawless academic record. Her first executive initiative was establishing the Evelyn Sterling Foundation for Working Women, a perpetual scholarship and child care assistance program funded jointly by her new salary bonuses and corporate matching grants, designed specifically to support single mothers finishing their technical degrees while working night shifts. 2 weeks later, on October 22nd, the sky over Atlanta was clear and blue, bathed in the soft golden light of late autumn. Marcus Sterling drove his old 2008 Ford F-150 through the iron gates of Greenwood Cemetery. He walked down the quiet, grassy path to Plot 47, Section C, stopping before the gray granite marker bearing the name Evelyn Marie Sterling, Beloved Mother. He knelt on the grass, the autumn leaves rustling gently around his boots. He placed a fresh bundle of yellow chrysanthemums against the stone. Then, from his jacket pocket, he pulled out the clean white envelope containing the $52.18 and Nia's handwritten note. He set the envelope gently against the base of the granite headstone. He rested his hand flat against the cold stone, feeling the sun-warmed surface beneath his palm. For 15 years, he had come to this spot carrying the crushing weight of an unpayable debt, haunted by the 2-year gap that had separated his mother's death from his first million. But today, the heavy, hollow silence inside his chest was gone. "I finished the bill, Ma," Marcus whispered into the quiet autumn air. "Your love didn't die with you. It's still working out here." A gentle breeze swept through the oak trees, scattering golden leaves across the green lawn. For the first time in 15 years, Marcus Sterling closed his eyes, took a deep, full breath, and felt completely at peace.